Training. All right. We were talking about training today. That was actually a good discussion because it's true. And that's why I try to teach the way I teach. So that I can try to get the most is for the best. You get the most bucks for your money, right? Oh, it's free. Man. Oh, well, so it goes, right? The words of the day, I picked these words. Some of them we've had before, but, you know, they're just always fun to get into. Marturo, Oumeos. Marturamos. And I'm not going to, like I said, I don't do the declensions for you, but marturo. Marturo is the basic word. This, and I gave you the thing, this comes from marturo, Martus, and this is a direct word that becomes in English martyr. However, what has become of martyr in the modern age is wrong, completely wrong, because if you see the translation, this word is witness. Right. Witness. And the reason the early witnesses to the evidence of the church, the reason the word became martyr through Latin is because they killed him. So basically, Fox's Book of Martyrs, which I thought was astounding. Did we talk about that last week? Fox's Book of Martyrs is Fox's Book of Witnesses. And when he wrote the Book of Martyrs, his whole point was they were witnesses to faith, people who died for their faith. Look, you don't die for your faith by killing other people. That has become the modern translation of martyr. But that's crazy. No God would call you to kill other people for your faith. What kind of nutso is that? All right? Oh, it drives me crazy.
What about Joshua?
Joshua? What about Joshua?
What did the Lord tell him to do? At Jericho.
He didn't tell him, God did not tell anyone to kill others for their faith. It wasn't to kill them because they would become better people or closer to God. You know, God may have made pronouncements. For example, God makes a pronouncement that if you do not put murderers to death, the blood of the innocent is on your nation. That's almost a direct quote from Leviticus. So God instructs us to put to death those who murder others, who are not innocent, right? And in God's mind, or for whatever reason, Jericho had breached God's laws, just like Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Which God took on his own hand, well, and with Lot's help too. We talked about that. So I don't know why the justice of God would say that you need to remove these people from earth. That's outside of my, and outside of, we're not even talking about, we're talking about Hebrews, right? But from a philosophical standpoint, God says put murderers to death. They're not innocent,
okay,
right?
We're not.
But we don't do it because of faith.
Don't try to put Jericho and an individual murderer in the same category.
You're stating there in a defensive
my understanding, and I may be wrong, but my understanding from my reading of Jericho was Joshua was instructed to kill every man, woman, and child and everything in it.
And we'd have to go and study that. I would put that to the side because to say that we have to go back and we have to look and see what it says in the Hebrew. Because I'm not totally convinced half the stuff. Like, for example, it does not say thou shalt not murder. In the Hebrew it says thou shalt not strike. That's what it says. So theoretically, you could be put to death for striking a person. So therefore, Jesus' talk in the New Testament in Matthew where he says, if someone slaps you, and he uses a word very specifically, backhanded. Because backhanded was not considered striking under Jewish law. However, if I hit you with a fist or with an open palm, that was considered striking, and therefore you could be put to death for striking. So again, when you delve deep into the things, that's where you got to get. You can't just go looking at stuff. And I'll give you this too. Why did God do what he did? We try to understand that, but that is called, what's the mind of God? It's theology, right? That's what we call theology. And here's my picture. Here's the creation. I put a Christus ex chai there. And then here is philosophia, right? That's what man can know. And outside of that is still the creation that man can't know or understand. And outside of that is, I put a theta, that's theos. That's God. So here is the bounds of what we can know. Are there things outside of our ability to understand and know? Oh yeah, big time. You know, which is interesting because what is the world's view?
Oh, we can know it all. Find out everything.
Do you know what that's called? There's a word for that.
Arrogance, yeah.
No, it's even better. There's an actual word. It's Gnosticism. Gnosticism is the belief that knowledge, all knowledge is yours. You can find knowledge. And if you find knowledge, you found God. Yes, sir.
So is that belief Gnostic that the dotted line can always be expanding and getting closer and closer and closer?
No, the modern world view of the view of everything. Number one, there is no God. You know, God does not exist. There, of course, there is no Christ.
Well, you get your eraser out, fix it then.
And, well, I could, but I don't want to. There's no need for a meta-epithumia. There's no need for a connection between man and God, because if there is no God, then what? You're just floating around in the universe, and you know, mystically, all the parts of the universe came together in the right combination to make you. Oh, that's so special. I'm not sure anyone can believe that. You know, especially with the Big Bang Theory, right? Big Bang Theory. With the Big Bang Theory, there's got to be a telos. There has to be a beginning. A telos is both a beginning and an end. There has to be a telos. What is the telic cause of the universe? You know, this drives the agnostics and the atheists nuts. You know, Big Bang proves there has to be a telic cause. So what do you call the telic cause? Hawkins. Hawkins wants to avoid calling the telic cause God. Because that might mean there's a God. Oh my goodness gracious me. You know, okay, now we're really getting into theology. This is kind of deep in theology. But, you know, really, this is the Greek, all I can tell you is this is a Greek worldview. Okay? Whether you agree with it or not is up to you. You don't have to agree with the Greek worldview. I think the Greek worldview, well, the Greek worldview is the worldview of everyone in the New Testament, right? All the New Testament scholars, they all hold to the Greek worldview. So if you understand the Greek worldview, it helps you understand the New Testament, right? Now, our worldview is very perverse, and I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure they're willing to document it on a piece. I think this is a pretty good worldview. I'm going for it, all right? I like it. I can understand it. I can explain it. And when you look at it, you go, well, that makes sense to me. Now, if I give you the other worldview, you know, the worldview of everything's just everything, so it's blank. If I erased everything, okay, and I drew a picture of what? The solar system. All right, let's do it. Here's the Earth, okay, and here's the solar system. How much do I know about it? Have I been there?
Parts of
Probes.
pictures.
Well, how do I know anything about it if I haven't been there? I see some. I get some radio waves and light and you know, maybe some dust from the stars, but we've only got stuff from, you know, meteorites and some asteroid pieces, parts. So we've never been to an asteroid except crashed on it because we were stupid. But we have been to the moon, right? We've been to the moon and have some parts of the moon if you don't believe the flat earthers who don't believe we've ever been to the moon. But then there's the solar system.
Don't forget Mars.
No, well, we did crash on Mars, yeah, but we haven't brought anything back. So we have pictures, right, of the
When we're
Mars.
talking about the solar system is only our sun and the planets that revolve. If you're talking about the galaxy.
Exactly. Okay, so here's the galaxy. How much do I know about that? Okay, and how many galaxies are there?
Billions.
Billions and billions, right? And so much do I know about that? Right? And then beyond that, there's, okay, let's say that beyond that is interstellar space and there's nothing out there. And it goes on for infinity. So how much do I know?
Don't they kind of, as far out as they can see, there's sort of almost a boundary to the universe past which they can't really detect anything else? And so they don't really know anything what's beyond that.
Well,
Monsters, there be monsters.
there is,
There be dragons.
There be
oh,
dragons.
there be dragons. Well, the problem is
It
this.
is sort of, that's like the edge of the Big Bang or whatever, as far as they can see it.
Well, here's the problem. Okay, let's say that there is a Big Bang, which is a neat theory, right? So if everything is expanding, okay, as it expands, the Big Bang is supposedly about 21 billion years old, right? So how far can I see?
No farther.
I can't see any further than 21 billion years. Now, as I get 22 billion years, now how far can I see? 22 billion years. As I get 20, right? You see what I'm saying? So the problem is what? Well, time and light.
Speed of light.
Time and the speed of light. Because there could be, you see, there could be much, much more beyond this
That we don't see.
that we can't see yet because
It hasn't gotten here.
it hasn't gotten here. Do you see this?
You can't see the edge because it hasn't got.
You can't ever, can you ever see the edge? Until you come to the edge, you can never see the edge. And how do you know you're at the edge?
It's a paradox.
It's a beautiful paradox.
There's a sign.
But in my picture here, this is a picture of the world, right? This is a philosophical or theological. Well, this is a what would we call it? This is a philosophical treatise of the way people see the world today, right? How do you like this one compared to mine? What does this one give you?
We don't know anything.
You don't know anything. You don't even know the beginning of it. You don't even know the boundaries of the universe. On the other hand, in the Greek idea, guess what? The boundaries of the universe are finite, even though they are infinite. The boundaries of creation are finite, even though they are infinite. The philosophia is finite, even though it is potentially infinite. This is beauty. This is what we call harmony. What a marvelous view of the world this is, compared to, well, I don't know where we are, where we're going, where we came from, and there's nothing out there, right? I can't even see it. I don't know about you, but look, the scientists can't even get what the weather's right tomorrow, right? You know, and they're going to tell me what the world is going to be like in 100 years. It's like, are you doofuses or what, right? And I'm a scientist. It's like, if I made a prediction like that, they would slap me. They'd never get me a paper published if I said those kind of silly things, right? But I guess in some science areas, silliness just prevails. And anyway, Hawkins is pretty silly, I think. And a lot of those guys that are the, what do we call them? Cosmologists? No, cosmetologists? Cosmetologists. They're the ones who work on your hair. Cosmologists. There's no difference between them.
Listen to
Okay?
your barber.
You probably know more from your barber and from your hairstylist than you would from these guys. Because their idea of God is, oh, they're telling cause we can't call God. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. We've gone down a beautiful rabbit trail, but the world is fun this way, right? But this worldview is Gnostic. It's purely Gnosticism. And by the way, if you're a Gnostic, have you found God yet?
No.
Look, the whole idea of philosophia is I use logic, I use the historical legal method, and I use the scientific method to know the truth of the world. How far can I get with those? I get a long ways.
Oh,
I get a long ways, you know. Matter of fact, remember Immanuel Kant proved there's God, right? And there's more to it than that. If you read a little bit, you're actually, your world horizon expands. So just with that in mind, okay? Anyway, the modern word martyr, let's put that out of our mind. The word is witness. And whenever we make a conclusion for other things, I am of a very strong assent that God or a God would never ask you to kill others for your faith unless you're a Kali believer. You know, Kali is the goddess. Supposedly, the more people you murder, the more godly you become, and you get your karma through that. That's, I think, pretentious and silly, but that's okay. This is a word I told you that I would. This is a declension, lambano. Lambano. The reason I want you to look at lambano is because lambano, look how it's translated in the King James. Accept, the amaze, say, attain, bring, when I call, catch, come on, forget, have, hold, obtain, receive, take. The word in the Greek has only one meaning. It cannot be translated in any other way. Look what it says. It's a primary verb, which is used only as an alternate in certain tenses. In other words, it has only one meaning in the Greek. The word in the Greek means to take. To take. To put it in any other term is sacrilege. I have no clue why they would translate this word accept, be amazed, say, attain, bring. When I call, catch, come on, forget, have, hold, obtain, or receive. We translate this word in the NIV almost all the time as receive. We like to translate the word lambano in Greek for receive. And I know why. It's because if we translate it take, it ruins some of our theological ideas. Isn't that sad? You have to argue that with Martin Luther. I'm sorry, but the word has only one meaning, and that is to take in Greek. That's why I like to give it to you. This word is really interesting because it's simple, but it's like typical Greek words. It's put together of a preposition with a standard word, and we all know the standard word pretty much. Let's see. I think I missed a. Maybe I didn't. Kontes. What's the basis word? Basis word. Thenesco. 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 You remember the word thenesco? Death. Death or die. Death or die. Apo means off. Basically, this can be translated to kill off or to die off. Kill off or die off. But it's really cool because apo, off, and death. And remember, let's see, we haven't done it, we haven't been there for a while, but remember in Mark, the catchphrase, because there is no word for resurrection in Greek. There is no word for resurrection in any language until after Jesus. That's an important thing to note, okay? The Latin brought one, invented one, we invented one after Christ, right? Before Christ, there is no word for resurrection. So we would always say, stand up from death, which is
Stand in the marketplace.
yes. Well, there's two, and I'm trying to remember them because I didn't write in my notes. But does anybody remember offhand? Necros. Yeah. What is it? Agirio necros, and the other one. Anyway, this is to kill off. It's the almost exact opposite. But one is, you have to have a phrase for resurrection from the dead, right? Which is neat. But we'll see this word, and I just threw it in because I thought it was a cool word. So anyway, this word, not martyrs, witness. This one, lambasco, to take, and that one, to kill off, or death off. There you go. Now, let's look. We're in 6. And the big deal, and I drew the picture again, I'm sorry. I like this picture. I think it's understandable to me, so I hope it's understandable to you. Here's Christ the sacrifice in the creation. And the meta-epithumia, that was what they said, the endless, the meta-epithumia, the pleasant, right? No, the endless scent of the sacrifice reaching from man to God and from God to man. In other words, this is, in the Greek worldview, when they saw the scent of the sacrifice, or they smelled the scent of the sacrifice, there's your scent, right? Whoever said scent, helps them learn. So the scent of the sacrifice going up and down from man to God. The big deal is, this is kind of the focus of this logical argument. But within the context of the logical argument, we have the question, who can give the sacrifice, right? Who can give the sacrifice? And that was a big deal. Who can give the sacrifice? Only the priest, and the priest has to be a son of Abraham, right? Or son of Aaron, right? Who is a son of Abraham, but a son of Aaron. And was Jesus Christ a son of Aaron? No. And if you went in, we talked about this, if you went to the Holy of Holies and you weren't a priest in the lineage of Aaron, you were supposed to die. Well, we kind of, and I didn't say it was a fact, but it's an interesting conjecture that when the Holy of Holies, did the Ruach HaKodesh go out? Did the Pneuma go out in Mark, and in, I think, Mark, Luke, and Matthew, where, remember when the curtain in the temple, which we read about, right, in Hebrews, back in the end of chapter 6, when that ripped, was that the Ruach HaKodesh going out? Was it Ruach HaKodesh coming in? Was it Jesus Christ coming into the Holy of Holies to bring the sacrifice? I mean, look, we say, well, we want to know, right? But what did the Greeks say?
Yes.
Yes. Well, see, and isn't that supposed to be the Lutheran answer, right? Yes. And I'm like, well, it's not so much the Lutheran answer, but the Greeks liked paradox, right? They loved paradox. And I think, my personal opinion, okay, this is theological, I think God loves paradox. I think God wants paradox not to confuse us, but rather with a paradox, if I have a paradox, what have I done about human life? Is human life complex or is it simple? Human life is very complex, right? But how do I make it more simple?
Accept the paradox.
I encapsulate it with a paradox. Look, do you love everything about your children?
No.
You hate some of the things about your children, right? But if you said, you would never say, I hate my children. That's kind of cultural, but it's also kind of real, right? Because it's a paradox. You love people, but then there's some things you just hate about people, right? You just can't stand some of the things. And my children, I've been very happy with, their thing. But there's some things I would say, don't do that. Are you dumb? And they get over it, right? They learn better, right? So your children, as they age and mature, hopefully they learn. If they stop learning, there's a serious problem there. But in any case, life is a paradox. And if I make it a paradox, it becomes more understandable within the context, because there are things you can't fully, there are things you don't want to say, right? And there are things that you can't express. Why can't you express them?
It's complicated.
It's too hard. That's why people write novels. Okay, that's why I write novels. When I write novels, I can express very, very complicated things in a story fashion that if you read it and got it, you'd go, okay, I kind of comprehend what this person is thinking or talking about. That's what you read, right? You read poetry, you read novels, and very complex novels. Do you fully comprehend what the person's trying to tell you? No. But they wrote in the novel what their conception of life is, and you may see a picture of it, right? Even in this class, I know I'm not going to, I would love to mind stream all the knowledge I have to you. And you would say, okay, I've got it, right? But I can't do that. I've got to, through words and through symbols, through pictures and through explanations and through your questions, then I can process and give you the information I have. And guess what? In the classes, you guys ask questions, you make statements, and I get to. What a cool process. Isn't this fun? In any case, this is the whole point of these paradoxes. And so we're at 6. Here's what it says. I think this is, I don't remember if it's NIV or I think it's NIV. This man, however, did not trace his descent from Levi, that is Melchizedek. Yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. And here it is in the Greek. I think we did partially, but here it is. But, day is but. He who's literally ho, so singular pronoun in Greek. Descent, literally it's not descent, it's genealego, to reckon by generations. It's gene logeo. Gene logeo. You can get it right. Logos, generations. So logical generations. Whose logical generations is not, the word may, counted. It literally, it reuses the gene logeo again. So, whose gene logeo to reckon by, logically by generations, not logically from generations, ek, from, autos, from them, literally dekatu, took a tenth in the Greek, of Abraham, and kai, bless, eulogeo, logeo. Good argument. Good argument. He gave a good argument. Didn't speak well of him, he gave him a good argument. That literally ho echo had held the promise, not the promise. This is what we had the word. Epangelia. Epangelia, the announcement of the gods. Here's my translation. But he who's to reckon by generations, not to reckon by generations, from them took a tenth of Abraham, and spoke well of him that held the message from gods. The message from gods was from Melchizedek. And that was, remember we talked before, the eulogo, the good argument from Melchizedek? The good argument from Melchizedek was about the gods, was about God. And when I say message from the gods, epangelia is usually translated gospel. Now why would they suddenly begin to translate the word that we use for gospel in the New Testament, epangelia, as promises or other translations? That's for you to talk to the translators about, because throughout the New Testament, almost everywhere, that word is used for gospel. In Hebrews, and I'll remind you, back at the beginning, in Hebrews, they use epangelia for the word of angels. And then all of a sudden it changed to the message of angels. And then the message from men. And now it's the promises of Abraham. Wow. Do you think it could really mess up our theology even more by giving us bad translations? I just say it. If it were up to me, when I translate stuff for you guys, I use the same words every time. I may use complex or it may sound a little complex, but I'm trying to give you the whole Greek. So what it sounds like. In Hebrews is not simple Greek. 7. And without all contradiction, the less is blessed of the better. And you know there's deep in this one because this sounds hard, right? This sounds hard. So here's what it says. It's not and, it's de. But without choris. Without choris. Remember what choris was? That was the word of the day last week. Choris. Choris, we get the word chasm from choris. So it's not without it's not without what do they translate? A contradiction. It's without a space. Without a space. Without at a space, if you like. Without a space. Pas. Pas means all, everything. Antilogia. 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 Logia.
The opposite of eulogia.
Yep. Now they want to say antilogia means a dispute. I'm not so sure antilogia means to dispute. It's kind of this is anti means what?
Counter.
Opposite, right? Opposite of logic, right? Of logos,
No logic.
of Lego, of a Lego. opposite of a Lego. So, de, but, choris, a space, all, dispute, opposite of logic, The lesser, the less, the eleison, person is added, eulego, to give a good logical argument, by the greater. Now, okay, let's see what my translation is. Okay, I know this is sound, but at a space separating, but a space is separating, I'll say all dispute, the less to speak well of from the stronger. Okay, what does this mean? What is it saying in the Greek? There is no space, there is no antilogia. It is logical to assume that the less speak well of the stronger. Right? That the less to speak well of the stronger. So in other words, if I'm weaker, I would speak well. But instead, they're setting up, well, let's see what it says in 8. Okay? In the one case, the tenth is collected, this is the NIV. In one case, the tenth is collected by men who died, but in the other case, by him who is declared to be living. Okay, who's by him? Who's declared living? Jesus Christ. Yeah. I'll read this again. This in the NIV. In the one case, the tenth is collected by men who die. So who died? The priest and Melchizedek, right? Well, Melchizedek was set up. They're nowhere saying that Melchizedek was a god or like a god, but they set up that Melchizedek had no generations. He had no beginning and no end within the context of the Scripture of the Old Testament, right?
We have no knowledge of it.
We have no knowledge of it. So he's kind of like this ethereal figure who's a Gentile, right? And they're setting up who he is within the context of who he is. So the big deal is, okay, so in one case, the tenth is collected by men who die, but in the other case is Jesus. Now here's a huge question. They're setting us up, right? What's the tenth collected by Jesus? Oh, okay, just think about it. All right, here's what it says in the Greek. And, kai. Kai is Greek, is and. So kai, hode. Not here. I guess you could translate here, but in this same spot. In and kai. And in the same spot, hode. Anthropos that die. And the word is apothenesco. They die off. Men that die off, not receive. Lambano. Take. They take tithes, decate a tenth. De, but. There, ekai. There, he receiveth them is added. Of whom it is added. Literally, marturo. Witness that he liveth. Now, okay. All right. Look what it says in the NIV. In the one case, the tenth is collected by men who die, but in the other case, by him who is declared to be living. Here's my translating. In this same spot, men who die off take a tenth, but they're witness that he lived. But they're witness that he lived. Who lived?
Jesus.
Okay, this is setting us up. Because it's setting us up. Those who died took a tithe. Both Abraham's sons, that is Aaron's sons, and Melchizedek, right? But only one did not die, or died and was resurrected, that came back. Witnessed that he lived. I think this is really interesting because the context, you know, I really wish they would use a little better context in their translations, because they define maturo, which is witnessed, as declared. But declared and witnessed are two different things. And the thing that's important to us, okay, I'll throw this in. One of the biggest problems I think that we have in our culture and society, okay, the New Testament is a historical legal witness to what?
Jesus' life, death, and resurrection.
Yeah, Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. How many books do I have?
Quite a few.
I have 27 that we accept. But you know what? There are 44 Gospels, of which only 11 are extant. Do you know how many other documents there are, that both Gnostic and regular documents? Many of them were accepted early by the church. The Shepherd of Hermes, Shepherd of Hermes was originally in the list. I mean, there's a few that were in the list were taken out. There were, others that we know of. And guess what? We don't study them anymore. We have them. They're extant. We have them available. I've read most of them. I've read all of them. But in case, there's a whole bunch. Right? These are witnesses. Well, what's the problem in our society?
They don't accept it as
We
witness.
throw them all out because
It's
miraculous
just,
things
you
happen.
know, it's,
My point goes back to at the turn of we love timelines, but at the turn of the 20th century, from the 1800s to the 1900s, that's the turn of the 20th century, guess what they stopped teaching? They stopped teaching the legal historical method. They stopped teaching logic and the legal historical method, and almost completely in schools began teaching the scientific method. Legal historical method, you pretty much have to go to lawyer, to legal, grad school to learn it. That's what they put you to death or put you in prison for. Legal historical methods used that way. And logic, if you learn logic, there's two types: there's rhetorical and philosophical logic. I'm sorry, I can't explain the difference to you in that short class, but there is a difference. And if you don't know the difference, it's like, we get cheated in our education system because some of the most basic things that were known by our ancestors are not taught to us. That should make us sad, because the knowledge that we've gained, what's the most important thing to know, right? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Have they changed? No, they really haven't. The amount of knowledge you really need to know has not changed, except for ideological knowledge. Now, why would they teach kids ideological knowledge instead of...
To indoctrinate.
Yeah, to get them to grow up to think the way they want them to.
As a matter of fact, remember the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto is required, required universal public education that's required. So, anyway, my point is this. This is not difficult stuff. But, you look at the world, and the world says, well, there is no witness to Christ. There's no truth, right? It's all belief. And that's what the Tübingen School says. I hate to bring that up, which we caused, unfortunately. Tübingen School. It doesn't matter if Christ died on the cross. What matters is what you believe. And that's wrong. I'll categorically say this is wrong. Because the whole New Testament is about the witnesses to, not faith, the witnesses to,
Historical events.
yeah, real things that happen in history. So what we have here, and which I love, is we are getting a smattering of the logical arguments. And Hebrews is really one of the most doctrinal books in the New Testament. Because what it does is tries to explain within a historical context the New Testament belief to the Greeks, Romans, Jews, and the Alexandrians, which were Egyptians in general. So anyway, let's go to 9. In 9, here's what it says in the NIV. One might even say that Levi, who collects the 10th, paid the 10th through Abraham. One might even say that Levi, who collects the 10th, paid the 10th through Abraham. Let's see what it says in the Greek. And Kai, as I may, so the word is hos, which means which how, complicated kind of saying. Which how, epos, word. Literally, epos is a word. I want to. Okay. When we read about the word in John, what word is used?
logo.
A logical argument. It comes, logos is the foundation for the word lego, which is a logical argument in Greek. A lego or a logos to a telos. And the reason they used the word logos in John, and I'll go back, I'm repeating, I know, but if you remember in Genesis, it says, in the beginning was God. And it says in the Greek, in the Septuagint, and the Logos was with God. And the Ruach HaKodesh, which is pneuma, was over the waters, right? The word used in the Septuagint Greek in Genesis is God Lego. God gave a logical argument to create the universe. And that's why John uses the word logos or logical argument in John. But that is not the Greek word for word. The word in Greek for word is epos. I should give it to you from a word a day. And from it you get the word epo. Epo, does anybody remember what epo is? Epo is a past tense. It's not the past tense of logos or anything else. Epo is literally the word that means in Greek, said. In other words, someone said something. It doesn't declare what they are saying, whether it's logical argument or opinion or a story or lelo or whatever it is. It doesn't declare what is being said. It just simply means it was said in the past. It's not even a past tense. It is a word in Greek that means this was pronounced. And what's interesting about it is it doesn't declare what it meant. So whenever you see epo, it's declaring simply that someone said something, but does not declare how they said it. If you notice, almost all the time in Greek, it tells us,
How they said it.
yeah, what they're meaning, right? If it's a logical argument, it says they logos, right? They lego. If it's a story, they say they rimi, right? If it's an opinion, they say they fimi. It's very clear. The Greek is very clear about telling us, except when they're telling us, and why would that be?
So
For you
important.
to decide.
Well, because if I tell you I'm giving you a logos, right, I can declare that. But on the other hand, if you repeat what I said, you could say, he gave me a logos, and we see that all the time, right? It says, and God legoed, right? It's very specific. But on the other hand, if you're just repeating what my words were to someone else, right?
It's hearsay.
Yeah, it would be hearsay. You would just say, he said this to me, right? As opposed to he legoed. Now you could say he legoed if
Doesn't
it
mean
was
I'm
clear to you.
convinced, I'm just parroting.
You're just parroting what I said, exactly. On the other hand, if I said, I'm giving you a Lego, this is a Lego, then you say, well, I get it. It's a logical, you're giving me a logical argument, whether I accept it or not, right? Because you don't have to accept the logical argument. But I think it's really interesting that the word epos is word. Why would the word epos be used for word as opposed to Legos or logos?
Epos could be any of the above. It's not specific to.
Or inclusive.
Right. And a word by itself has, a word by itself has a definition, has a meaning, right? But it doesn't have a argument, right? Or an opinion. A word is just a word, right? Even if I use a dirty word or a bad word, the word itself, well, some words that we would consider bad are used by, used correctly and within a context. You see what I'm saying? So a word by itself has no meaning other than the meaning that it has. There's nothing that connotes from it. But yet a logos or a logical argument does, big time. So, let's see, where did I get to this? I didn't get to that yet. 9. And Kai, which how says, hos, word, epo, said, Levi also, Levi Kai, and ho, lambano. It says receiveth, no, he took, tithes, decate, paid tithes through Abraham. Here's my translation. And which how word said, literally with, this is a Greek figure of speech. With that said, and which how word said, with that said, Levi and he took a tenth tithe through Abraham. Levi and he took a tenth tithe through Abraham. Who's the he? It's the guy who was the witness to the witness that he lived. And with that said, Levi and he took a tenth tithe through Abraham. You could read it both as Melchizedek, but the previous one was the witness of he who lived. That is, who lived? Jesus Christ. So in other words, they're making, this is a logical transition. Now, how logical you want to take it or not, I think it's very interesting in what they're arguing, what the argument is. But he's saying that Levi and Abraham, Levi and Christ, tithe through Abraham because of Melchizedek. Because Christ is being related to Melchizedek, and Abraham is related. Here we get in 10, and it says, because, and here's the NIV, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. Because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. It says in 10, Gar. Okay, I know they give us 4 all the time for Gar. Gar means in Greek assigning a reason. It is a logical term. So instead of 4, it's saying assigning a reason in, literally, it means in, you can say was, okay. Yet ete, still in the loins, in the loins, the ophos, the loins of his father, pater, when at which thing too, Melchizedek sunateo, together opposite, autos, him. This is a translation. Assigning a reason, he was still in the loin, the father of his father, at which thing too, Melchizedek stood together opposite him. So in other words, Levi was not born. He was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek tithed him. Which means that who is tithing whom within the context of this? If Jesus is associated with Melchizedek, then Melchizedek and Christ are tithing the whole generation of the Levites, which means who is the greater and who is the priest?
Melchizedek and Jesus.
Melchizedek and Jesus are a greater priest than Abraham and his sons. It's setting, and because Melchizedek didn't have a beginning and end, just like, guess what? The Alpha and the Omega of the Alpha and the Omega. Let's see what's Omega in Alpha and Omega in Christ, right? The beginning and end. Melchizedek had no beginning and end. And so associated with Christ, that means that Melchizedek as Christ was the greater priest and tithing. And this is a logical argument, like I said. 11. If perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, and now our argument is changing. Our argument is we have argued now that Christ as Melchizedek was a greater priest, and therefore he was able to tithe, and he tithed the children of Israel through all the lineage of Aaron, right? Now it says, if perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, for on the basis of the law was given to the people, why was there still need for another priest to come, one in the order of Melchizedek and not in the order of Aaron? Here it is in the Greek. On. It's not therefore. On means certainly. If certainly, teleosis, completion, or Perfection's okay. Perfection, completion were and was by or dia through the the Levitical priesthood, the herazune, the sacredness, gar, assigning a reason, epi, over, autos, the people, the leos, received the law, nomo theto, legislated the law, and nomo theto, teteo, nomo teteo, nomo teteo. Now, teteo, nomo is law, and teteo, I should have given this the word day. Legislated the law, basically teteo is to place the law. Tis, further, ete, still, career, employment. This is a very complex statement in Greek. Was there that was added. Herteros, other or different, priest, and anistemi. That's a word. Remember the word? Anistemi. Anistemi, to rise up in the marketplace, to stand up. After, literally, kata, down, the order, the taxes of Melchizedek, and not, or never, literally never, be called, be argued, not called, be argued after the order of Aaron. So here's a translation. The writer of Hebrews is writing some really good Greek, okay? Hebrews is probably the best Greek there is, but you know what? It don't necessarily fit into our English kind of thinking, right? It's kind of, like, you got to really parse this stuff. This is what it says. If certainly completion were through the Levitical sacredness, assigning a reason over it, the people legislated the law. What still required another priest to stand up, down the regular argument of Melchizedek, and never logically down the regular arrangement of Aaron. Now listen to this very carefully. This is what the Greek is saying. If certainly completion were through the Levitical sacredness, assigning a reason over it, the people legislated the law. What claim is the Hebraic writer making here? Who set in place the Aaronic priesthood?
Through Moses.
Yeah, but the writer of Hebrews is saying it was the people legislated the law. In other words, God may have done it, right? God may have assigned it, but what did the people do?
Amen.
They were trying to perfect it by adding more to it. That's what the Pharisees were trying to do, make sure every little thing was taken care of.
They were changing the interpretation to keep up the times.
I think that's, what were you going to say? You have an idea on this?
So, all in all, in this whole thing, is just telling the Jews that Abraham allowed Melchizedek to sacrifice, even though that was not in accordance with what the Jewish law at the time. So Jesus can in the same order. So get over it.
Well, okay, you're kind of getting this, but we got to go back to history. Let's go back to history. If we go back to history, it's very easy to understand. Very easy to see what the Hebraic writer is telling us. Okay, so what happened in the second diaspora is better. So what happened in the second diaspora? What happened to all those priests? They went to Babylon. Okay, now when they came back, what was the biggest problem they had?
Genealogy.
Yeah, because everybody wanted, matter of fact, today, what's the most common Jewish name? Cohen. What does Cohen mean? Priest. Why did every Jew wanted to be Cohen? Well, because they could be part of the priesthood. That's the peak, other than the king, right? And it's kind of dangerous to be a king. Okay, being a priest is kind of okay, because they ain't going to swack you, right? But being a king, it's like, well, you know, it's time to die, dude, because you're related to the king. That's dangerous, right? But it's easy being a Cohen. So guess what happened? Everybody coming back from the diaspora? I'm a priest, I'm a priest. And what did they say in, was it Jeremiah and, let's do, Nehemiah and, when they came back, Nehemiah and Jeremiah, is that the two? Anyway, when they came back, what they had to do?
Get rid of their foreign wives.
Well, they had to, well, they did that, but the big deal was they had to figure out,
Who is really from the line?
and guess what they did to some of them?
Booted them out.
Well, they sent them home. They said, you're going back to Babylon, right? So a huge problem. There was a huge problem in knowing who was really in the priesthood and the genealogy of the people coming back to Jerusalem after that diaspora. Now, what are we in? I think that this is the next diaspora, right out of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So we're after 70 AD, maybe a few years. So what is a problem here?
And the records are destroyed.
They have destroyed records, but what do they have in Alexandria?
Another
They have a temple. They have a temple, and that means they have priests, okay? Now, these priests are sacrificing at the temple in Alexandria. Is that allowed?
No.
No. What about the Essenes that are sacrificing in their little temple? No. It may be at Shiloh, but that's a no, right? Do we have an issue?
Yes.
We have a serious issue. So therefore, when the writer of Hebrews says, if certainly completion were through the Levitical sacredness, assigning a reason over it, the people legislated the law. Do you get it now? Who was deciding who was a priest?
People.
The people and even the priests. Oh, I'm a priest, right? Look, my last name, I came out of Babylon, right? Here's my family, here's the genealogy. Prove it. Oh, I really can't, but I am, right? See? The people are legislating the law. That's what he's saying. But it says, what still required another priest to stand up down the regular arrangement of Melchizedek, and never logically down the regular arrangement of Aaron. Why? Why couldn't it never logically be down the regular arrangement of Aaron?
Because you can't be sure of it anymore.
You can't be sure. What can I be sure about the Melchizedek, though?
That he wasn't, but he was.
He wasn't in the priesthood, but he is an eternal priest who was over Abraham and over Aaron, right? He's greater than Aaron. And so therefore,
accepted it.
and therefore Christ proved he was because he rose from the dead and he applied the sacrifice that went from man to God.
Fulfillment of those prophecies that Bill come to in just a few verses.
Bingo! I'm glad you're reading ahead. Thank you, Father, for your word. I pray you look after us this week. In your name we pray, amen. And next week there is
No class.
no class because there's
There's a lot of mom and